Please be seated. The court is now in session. This morning, the chamber will continue to hear the remainder of the testimony of the witness Wan Seun. And Ms. Jia Siu Huang, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to today's proceedings? The greffier, Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. Asa Rakang, the defense counsel for Khieu Samphan, is absent due to health reasons. Mr. Tuyole, the duty counsel for Khieu Samphan, notifies the greffier that she will be a little bit late this morning. And as for Noon Chi, he is present in the holding cell downstairs, as he requests to have his rights to be present in the courtroom. His waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to continue his testimony, that is Mr. Wan Seun, and his duty counsel are present in the courtroom. Thank you. President, thank you, Mrs. Siu Huang. The chamber now decides on a request by Noon Chi. The chamber has received a waiver from Noon Chi dated 5th March 2015. He confirms that due to his health condition, that is headache, back pain, and that he cannot sit for long, and in order to effectively participate in the future hearings, he requests to waive his rights to participate in and be present at the 5th March 2015 hearing. His defense counsel informed him that about the consequence of this waiver, that in no way it can be construed as a waiver of his rights to be tried fairly or to challenge evidence presented or admitted to this court at any time during the trial. Having seen the medical report of the accused Noon Chi by the duty doctor at the ECCC, dated 5th March 2015, who notes that the health condition of Noon Chi today is that he has back pain and that he cannot sit for long. He also recommends that the chamber shall grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Noon Chi's request to follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs via an audio-visual means for today's proceedings, as he waives his direct presence in the courtroom. The AV unit is instructed to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Noon Chi can participate in and follow today's proceedings remotely. And before the chamber hand the floor to the defense teams, the chamber would like to clarify it and also to notify the parties and the public that yesterday afternoon, after the 20-minute discussion, the chamber notifies the concerned parties that after the testimony of the current witness, Mr. Wan Seun, is concluded, the chamber will not hear the testimony of the witness through TCW 803 as originally scheduled. This witness will be rescheduled to appear in due course. The reason that the chamber decides not to hear through TCW 803 is that the co-prosecutors proceeds with the ongoing disclosures of documents and other parties do not have the capacity and the sufficient time to read and review those documents concerning to specific witnesses to appear before the court. And the Chamber will instead hold a trial management meeting to discuss the issues raised by the Nunchi defense teams on the ongoing disclosure process of documents by the prosecution. And court officer, please make an arrangement with Risu to send the reserve witness through TCW 803 back to his residence, and wait for the new rescheduling of his appearance before the court. The Chamber now would like to hand the floor to the defense team to continue putting questions to this witness. And you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning, Council. Mr. President, with your leave, I would like to start my questioning with showing the witness a drawing made by witness Sraitan before the co-investigating judges. It is document D125/129, English 00231677, and Khmer 00. Excuse me. 00224792. My apologies, I don't have the French ERN quite yet. However, this document has been extensively discussed. With your leave, I would also like to put it on the screen, and I would like to give a paper copy of this drawing made by Sraitan to the witness.
Yes, you may proceed.
Can we put it on the screen, Mr. President, as well?
Yes, you can do so.
Mr. Witness, would you be so kind and have a look at this drawing? And once you have been able to study this drawing a bit, could you tell us whether this is an accurate description of the inner compound of Krang Tachan?
President, the Deputy International Co-Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. In order not to lead the witness into error, I would like to make him understand that this map is not oriented in a normal way. The north is pointed to the south, so there's a real change in relation to a normal map where the north is really on top and the south at the bottom. Here it's the contrary, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the witness should pay attention to this.
I agree, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, when you have a look at this drawing, you should realize that Duik, who drew this map, puts the north on the bottom and the south on the top. With this in mind, and having been able to have a look, could you now tell the Chamber whether this, in your recollection, is an accurate description of the inner compound of Krang Tachan?
បាទ
The drawing is not that accurate, and it is very difficult for me when the north orientation is at the bottom. It's hard for me to visualize it.
I agree with you, Mr. Witness, but that's how it is, I'm afraid. But you said it's not all accurate. If you give it a try and have another look, what is not exactly accurate in your recollection?
As for the entrances should be at the corner.
All right. What else? What else is maybe not an accurate description or drawing?
The inaccurate description is in relation to the entrance and the exit, as well as the locations of the buildings.
Would you be able to tell us what is not accurate in regard to the buildings?
The entrances were through the west and through the east, and the building were aligned from east to west.
And what about the interrogation room in relation to the buildings where the prisoners were detained? Can you say anything about that?
The buildings were to the north of the entrance.
And the place where prisoners were interrogated, where was that situated?
The interrogation room was to the south of the entrance. It was about 30 meters from the entrance.
Mr. Witness, yesterday we spoke at the end of my questioning about the radio and the attached loudspeakers. If you have a look at this drawing, would you be able to tell us where the radio and or amplifier was and where the speakers were in the period that you were stationed at Krang Tachan?
The radio player was kept at the location of the chief of the office.
And where was the office of the chief?
His office was located at the center of the compound.
Returning a bit to the speakers that we discussed yesterday, you gave a description as to the size of the speakers yesterday. Just to be sure, were there on the compound poles on which the speakers could be attached so that they could produce more volume?
No, the speakers were placed on a table.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. Now, I would like you to have a look at the prisoner buildings on this drawing. We spoke yesterday about grandmother Noor and her daughter Rat, or Sarat. As I understand from your testimony, both were prisoners. In your recollection, where were both women detained, or where were they sleeping at night, in which of the two buildings?
Mr. President, I have an objection. The witness clearly said that there were 3 buildings, but on this map that was drafted by Sraitan, there are only 2 buildings. So the question is, in which of the 2 buildings were these 2 female prisoners placed? And I don't think that this exactly corresponds to what the witness said yesterday. On the one hand, Tuk said that there were 2 buildings, and then this witness says there were 3, and one of which was less used than the other. So I think this question should be reformulated.
No problem, Mr. President. Forget the drawing. Mr. Witness, in your recollection, where were Rat and her mother, grandmother Noor, detained, in your recollection? In which building on the compound?
Jinyo and Sarat were detained in the second building, that is after the entrance to the south of the compound.
And when you're saying detained, do you mean detained during the day or only during the night?
Jinyo and Sarat were only detained during the night time, and they were let out to work during the daytime.
And do you remember whether they were always together while detained at night in the same building?
Yes. Rather, no, they were not together as always.
Can you expand a little bit on that? What do you mean sometimes they were not together, or what does your recollection tell you about the detention of both women?
I did not know the details because they were not at the center at the same time. One came after another. So they were detained, but not exactly at the same time.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Witness, but I understand from other testimony that both were pretty much detained at the same time for a period about 2 years, 2.5 years. Is that your recollection as well?
The duration of the detention, as you stated, is correct.
So again, I'm only asking some details as to where they were at night while detained. Were they in shackles? some more details about what they were doing during the day. Can you tell us some more about both women?
I did not know much about what happened at night time as I stood guard outside the compound.
I understand that Grandmother Noor was sometimes, or most of the times, cooking for other prisoners. Do you know if her daughter Raad assisted her with the cooking?
Yes.
Do you remember whether she was busy with cooking all day, or was it only part of the day?
She was busy for one session in the morning and again for another meal session in the afternoon.
In those 2.5 years that both women were detained at Krang Tachan and cooking for prisoners, were you ever able to chit-chat with Raad, for instance?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember what you would speak about when you were chit-chatting with Raad?
We just had a casual chit-chatting, nothing of important nature.
Do you know, do you remember whether anything bad happened to Raad while she was in detention?
No, not during her detention, because Yinyo, Raad, and myself, we were kind of close to one another, and she referred to me, or she called me as a son, or her son.
I'll be a little more specific, Mr. Witness. Do you know whether Raad was ever physically attacked by fellow guards or cadres?
I did not know about that.
Do you know whether she was ever the victim of a sexual assault?
Mr. President, witness, please wait. And the international political lawyer for civil parties, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought that the Chamber had adopted a rule asking us to be very cautious when we would refer to people who might have been victims of sexual violence during the period we are focusing on today, and the name should not be revealed publicly and shown to the witness. So I wanted to know if this applies now. For me, it should. In that case, I would like the defense to stand by the Chamber's recommendations on this issue.
Mr. President, if you allow me to react. In general, I don't see why we should make a difference in asking witnesses questions about mass executions, killing of children, eating livers of dead bodies from prisoners. And we should be overly cautious when it comes to the question of sexual assault or rape, which of course is also a crime against humanity. Secondly, we have no idea whether Raad has any concerns about her privacy. We all pretend that we know, but nobody knows. So rather than have a vague reference to somebody's possible concerns in relation to privacy, I think we should be able to go ahead. If you don't think so, then I think I request to close the chamber and allow me to ask this question. It goes directly, and that's why I'm asking, it goes directly to the reliability and credibility of one witness. So I should be able to ask these questions.
The President, the Chamber would like to hand the floor to Judge Fens to respond to the objection by the co-prosecutor as regard the line of questioning by the defense counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea. Judge Fens, you may proceed.
Firstly, and generally, the general order issued by the Chamber concerning the protection of privacy of victims of sexual assault stands. Full stop. When it comes to the current line of questioning, the Chamber wishes to consult the transcript on something and therefore orders counsel for the time being to abandon it. You will be given time after the break to follow this line of questioning, and please move to another subject at the moment.
No problem, Judge Fens. Mr. Witness, in the same chair as you are sitting now, your former fellow unit member, Small Duik, has been sitting as well. And I put to him a series of questions. Questions that were based upon the testimony of Sai Sen. Sai Sen had testified before this chamber that Duik and some of his fellow unit members has been involved in execution of children, sexual assault and rape, mass executions, etc. When confronted with this testimony, Duik answered that what Sai Sen had testified to were, and I quote literally, fabrications. Now my question to you is the following. What is your reaction to Duik's testimony calling Sai Sen's testimony fabrications?
The President, please wait, Mr. Witness. Mr. International Co-Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Oui, Monsieur le Président.
I have an objection, Mr. President, to this question. Yesterday, I should have objected to the question as to whether Sai Sen had lied. I do not think that the witness is in a position to take a stand regarding Sai Sen's testimony, since Sai Sen saw other things. He perhaps had access to other locations at the detention center. He buried bodies and so on and so forth. This is not the case with this witness before this chamber. I do not see how this witness can qualify Sai Sen's testimony or Deutsch's reaction to Sai Sen's testimony as correct or not. Since he did not witness all that, he is not in a position to say whether Sai Sen lied or not. To ask such a question would be to mislead the chamber.
Mr. President, I'm not quite sure how to react to this. Maybe by proposing in general the suggestion that maybe it's time that all parties, including the trial chamber, pays an on-site visit to Krang Tachan. It's, I can tell you, I can assure you, very, very helpful in understanding things. It is very, very small site. And of course, I'm presenting evidence now, but it is impossible, literally impossible, not to see at least part of the things, or experience part of the things, or hear part of the things that Saisen is testifying to. So now, by now saying that Saisen somehow miraculously saw other things that this witness couldn't have possibly seen is incomprehensible.
The President's judgment, you may proceed.
As you said, Counsel, you were testifying. But since you said something in passing, is there a request or is there no request? And if so, please reason it in a way that allows us a decision.
No, there is no such request, as you know. But this objection may actually make me, right now, to formulate the request that we should maybe all go there. And
that's what I'm asking. Do you make a request or don't you? And if so, reason it, please.
Well, you're getting me a bit by surprise, but maybe I can illustrate it by saying how incredibly important it was for our defense team to be on the site, to see the parameters of the compound, to understand how far things are from each other, to see, in fact, the mountains and the foot of the mountains, and see the surrounding rice fields, see the buildings, although the original buildings are not standing anymore. Then it would dawn immediately upon the trial chamber, Mr. President, that the objection doesn't make any sense. It's either or. I'm not suggesting that this witness or his fellow unit members should have been able to see everything, but the idea that you wouldn't be able to witness the execution, for instance, of 100 prisoners, the burial in pits of 100 prisoners, the awful smell that must have come from decomposing bodies, it's just simply impossible. So it is our position that it is either or. Either Saisen and Miyasoka are lying, or the unit members are lying, the guard members are lying. So, having said this, yes, by this a request that all of us should travel. It's not very far, actually. Should travel to Krang Tachan and see it for ourselves.
The President, the lead co-lawyer, you may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've also visited Krang Tachan, but we do not draw the same conclusions as the defense. So what the defense is saying is subjective and partial. The defense appears to take the position that this witness is testifying and telling the truth and has nothing to hide as a guard at Krang Tachan. I have no problem with what the defense is trying to achieve with the questions, but I assume that you have enough basis to assess the relevance of the testimony of this witness today. He is saying that he did not witness all that, and at least this is a basic consideration that the chamber can make on the basis of what the witness has said.
Prosecutor, we have a formal request now. May I ask your comment?
I do not have any particular opinion to express on this matter. It's important to know how the facilities were arranged at the time. None of the buildings are in existence today, but to respond to what the defense has said, I believe the defense is forgetting the role of the witness as a messenger. And the witness has said on several occasions that he was very young at the time and he only worked within the framework of the activities of his team. Regarding a trip to Krang Chan, I would defer to your wisdom if you do deem such a trip necessary. I have nothing more to say on that matter.
The President, the ruling, the trial chamber wish to suspend the request by the Defense Counsel for Nuon Chea to visit at the site, and we will rule on that later in due course. And secondly, the chamber the objection by the OCP to your last question sustained, and the witness is not required to respond to this question, and the Defense Counsel is instructed to question the witness on the facts that witness know, so that you can avoid any question that asks the witness to make the assertion or speculative answers. So the trial chamber in the position to consider all the testimony before it come into evaluate the evidence for ascertaining the truth.
Mr. Witness, I will move to another subject, although it also involves Sai Sen's testimony again. I would like to put before you a few of the things that Sai Sen has testified to that he was busy with while at Krang Chan. He gave testimony to the trial chamber that one of his tasks, for instance, was the counting of prisoners who were to be executed. Do you know anything about this? Did you ever see Sai Sen getting a task to count prisoners before their execution?
President, Please hold on, witness. The international co-prosecutor, you may proceed.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President, I think the defense should quote exactly what Saisen said in order not to distort his evidence. I think he said that he guarded prisoners in a detention facility. He didn't say that that was before the execution of those prisoners. He didn't say so. So may I request that the defense should cite precisely either a transcript of an interview of Saisen or a passage from the transcript, because that is not what I heard in this courtroom.
Mr. President, Your Honors, we had Saisen before us. You prepared his testimony. He gave also testimony in his written statements. In order to speed up the proceedings, I tried to give a description of the guard-like duties that he performed. I'm having here before me counting prisoners being executed, unshackling prisoners before their execution, digging burial pits, carrying and burying corpses, stripping clothes off corpses post-execution, guarding prisoners working outside, carrying prisoners after interrogation, distributing prisoners food and water. It's all there, and I think I should be able to give a general description of the duties that Saisen says he performed, and then ask the witness whether he saw Saisen performing these duties.
Counsel, the only problem we are having is that we have a party who contests your memory and asks you to identify the part in the transcript where the witness said what you says he said. So please do that.
It's not my memory. I wrote it down, but I'll ask it in a different way. Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen count prisoners before being executed?
Answer, no, I didn't.
Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen unshackle prisoners before their execution?
Answer, no, I didn't see that.
Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen dig pits for dead prisoners?
Answer, no, I didn't see that.
Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen unshackle and remove corpses from the buildings?
Answer, no, I didn't.
Mr. Witness, did you see Saisen ever strip clothes of corpses after the execution of these prisoners?
Answer, no.
Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen guard prisoners while they were working outside?
Answer, no, I didn't.
Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen carry prisoners after their interrogation?
Answer, no, I didn't.
Mr. Witness, did you ever see Saisen distribute food and water to prisoners?
Yes, I saw him distributing food for the prisoner.
Was that the only thing that you ever saw Saisen do, or were there other things?
Answer, I saw him distributing food to the prisoner together with Ye Nyo and rat.
Mr. Witness, is this your testimony that is the only thing that Sai Sen ever did while at Krang Ta Chan?
Answer, yes.
My last subject, I think, Mr. Witness, I've asked you questions about things that you saw, things that you saw with your eyes. Now I would like to ask you questions about another organ that you have, your nose. While at Krang Ta Chan, did you ever smell something out of the ordinary?
Answer, talking about this, because I was there, I smell something.
What is it that you smell?
It was a smell from the human corpse.
And when did you smell this? How strong was the smell? How often did you smell this?
Answer, it was a sting smell, and it was awful smell everywhere inside the area, the side of the compound.
And where did this smell come from?
The smell came from the pits where corpses were buried.
Where exactly was this?
The burial site was to the south of the perimeter of the center.
Where exactly?
Answer, the site was not large. It was 70 meters squared, and the outside fence, the outside perimeter is about 300 square meters.
Did you ever ask, for instance, Ta An, whether the smell of these bodies came from prisoners or from something else? Were these prisoners who were executed, or were these prisoners who had died because of illness?
But I did not dare to ask them about that.
So you didn't know the smell that you smelled came from executed prisoners or from other dead bodies. Is that correct?
Mainly what they spoke to us outside, that the smell was the smell from the dead corpse of a dog or the dead corpse of a chicken.
So is it? I'm not sure if I understand you correctly. You're talking about a smell, but are you saying now that this is the smell of the decomposing bodies of animals?
Yes.
Maybe a strange question to you, but if you are not able to answer this, I have no problem with that. Are you able to make a distinction between the smell of decomposing bodies of animals and human remains?
When we walk past the people who work inside, and we said that we smell something, and they would reply that it could be the smell from a decomposing body of a dog, of a dead dog. That's what they said.
Mr. Witness, do you know whether the site where Krang Tachan was situated used to be a grave site before 1973?
No, I was not aware of that.
I apologize for the short interruption, Mr. President. I'm just reviewing my questions. There's one last subject, Mr. Witness, with your permission, I would like to discuss with you. And that is part of the testimony that your fellow unit member Duik gave to the chamber. That is his testimony on 19 February of this year, E1/2661. English ERN 010699786 and French 0106975. It's a question from the prosecution. I will read the question to you, and then I will read Duik's answer to you. Prosecution. Let me just follow up one more question. Were you ever aware at any time of prisoners being transferred from Krang Tachan to other prisons? Answer. Yes, there were sending of the prisoners to other places, but I don't know whether there were other prisons. I don't know what happened or their destination. How often were prisoners transported to other sites? It was not very often when they were sent. It happened late 1978 and early 1979. Question. Do you have any information as to where it was that these prisoners were sent in late 78 or early 79? I don't know their destination. My question to you, Mr. Witness, do you remember, we spoke about it briefly yesterday, but do you remember, now that I have refreshed your memory, whether prisoners were taken out of Krang Tachan and transported to other prisons in the zone or in the region?
No, I did not know about that.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. With the exception of one or two questions that I still have, I'm finishing now my examination and would like to ask my national colleague if he has any questions.
Defense Counsel. Good morning, Mr. President, and good morning, Mr. Witness. Mr. Witness, you have testified for almost 2 days, and many questions have been put to you. I only have a few questions for you, and I seek your help in clarifying them. My first question is related to the transfer from the district army to work at Kantachan office. Were you transferred under the order of your direct commander? Answer. No, in fact, I was not transferred. Kantachan office requested some force to assist them in the guarding duty there. Question: when you came to work at Kantachan office, did you maintain any contact or relationship with your military commander? Answer: no. Question: once you arrived at the Kantachan office, who was your immediate supervisor? Answer: it was Ta'an. Question: when you arrived at the Kantachan office, you stated before this court that you became a guard there. Did you have a guard post, or did you mainly patrol the perimeter of the compound? Answer: I stood a guard outside at the outside entrance. Question: when you were at the entrance at the outer part, were there other forces who patrolled the perimeter of the compound, including you, or were you only mainly stationed at the entrance, at the outer entrance? Answer: I only guarded at the outside perimeter, and besides that, I was a mail or letter courier. Question: when you were a guard for the outer perimeter or a messenger there, did you ever enter the inner compound of their re-education office? Answer: yes, I was allowed. For example, during the meal time, we were directed where to go, that is to enter from the east entrance and headed directly toward the dining hall. Question: did you ever wander to see this building or that building located within the compound? Answer: yes. Question: you also stated that there was an interrogation room. During the period that you worked there, did you ever go to that interrogation room? Answer: no. Question: also, while you were working there, did you ever see Vietnamese people who had been arrested and sent to that office? Answer: no. Question: as for Cambodia Crown people, did you ever hear that they were arrested and sent to that office? Answer: no. Question: what about the Cham people? Did you see them there? Answer: no. Mr. President, I don't have any further question. Thank you. President, thank you. It is now convenient to take a short break. We will take a break now and return at 10:30. And court officer, please assist the witness during the break. And have him return to the courtroom with his duty counsel at 10:30. The court is now in recess.